Welcome to the Church Office Podcast. My name is Gavin Smith, and it's a joy to welcome you. If you're joining us on a podcast platform or you're watching us on video, then thanks for joining us. It's a podcast about church administration, all the work that happens behind the scenes, and it's Christmas. We're in the thick of busyness and craziness, and I've got a special guest today, Neil Tallamy from Baglan. How are you doing, mate?
I'm doing okay, thank you, Gavin. Or at least I was until you asked me to do this podcast. on top of everything else at Christmas. So thank you.
I'm grateful. And today's topic is really outreach, is thinking about how we make the most of Christmas. And I know Neil's probably most of the way through his program. But mate, tell us a bit about yourself and the church there.
Okay, so we planted the church 20 years ago. Three couples felt that God was calling us to plant a church in an area that didn't have an evangelical church. And yeah, I guess it just grew really. And so 10 years on from that, we bought our first building, which was an old social club. So it's really great that, I guess, in the 1960s, when people imagined that there was this building being built and purposed for a pub, to be a pub, that little did they know, but God knew that in the year 2012 it would become a church, or a venue for a church, which is fantastic. So yeah,
it's a tremendous place. When I came to visit, I thought this is so good, such a good place, right in the heart of the community, mate. It's and you've got some fantastic facilities there, haven't you?
It's really good. Yeah, we're really blessed with them, actually. Yeah. So when we bought the building, it was a real dump, but we've been able to make it look a lot nicer, I suppose.
Oh, mate, good. Well, today's theme is Christmas, mate. And I know, Neil, from knowing you just from our friendship together, you are a brilliant evangelist. You've got a real heart to reach out for the gospel. And so I want to learn from you today. I want to catch some of that passion and that gifting and that energy today as we're kind of in the middle of our Christmas program, coming up to our big kind of carol service event, which, we normally get, just under 1,000 people come to. Then, how do we make these things intentional for the gospel? Mate, tell us about your program and your Christmas program and how you've designed it and been thinking that way. I'd love to get your thoughts.
Okay. How to Intimidate Someone by Gavin Smith. We're about to have our carol service where we're expecting 1,000 people, and you're talking to me about how to reach people. Wow. Yeah. What was the question again, Gavin?
That's really put you off, isn't it? I'll probably only get 100 people this year now.
I hope so.
Tell us a bit about your Christmas program. What's been happening?
Oh, the Christmas program. Okay. Well, normally we would have three kind of carol type services. So the thinking is you just maximize the opportunities to reach as many people and as many different people as possible. So yeah, I guess we conceived them over the years, nothing incredibly earth shattering and novel. But this year we added a different one. I changed the first one out. So we began 3 weeks ago with something we call the Christmas Experience. Yeah. Where we kind of aimed it towards young families, so parents with youngish children, and we sort of kitted out the whole of the downstairs of the building with different sections for crafts and games and puppeteering show and balloon modeling and all sorts of stuff, and then an area in the coffee shop where people were able to have hot chocolates and design their own toppings, and the kids would have milkshakes, and there was mulled wine for the adults as well, that kind of stuff. We kind of decorated it. We had a snow machine, so people were coming in with, did we have it for that one? No, we did. No, we had it upstairs. And then after an hour of all that kind of stuff, we took everybody upstairs and they walked into a kind of a setting, a Victorian type setting, where people were already acting in the hall and throwing snowballs around and stuff. And then they sat down, and then we put on a sort of a play, which one of the guys in the church wrote, loosely based on Scrooge.
Okay.
So a grumpy old man who was really mean and horrible, and then he gets a kind of like a visit from not three ghosts, but from his conscience,
Okay.
who kind of like points things out. And I guess cutting it short, he gets saved. He's changed. He wants to give his money away. So it was interactive. We got the kids up to sing and do different things, and he shot them with a water pistol and all that kind of stuff. But just another way of getting the gospel across to people, I suppose.
Yeah, I love that. So that was your kind of community event, and
Yeah.
I love all the different activities. You're going to draw families from the local area, I guess, for that. And
Yeah. And do you know, I think though, we've been doing these what we call kids festivals now for a couple of years, and we've built up, I guess, the quite a number of parents with kids who just have always come, and we've got a Facebook group, and so whenever we put something on, it goes into the Facebook group, and then we put it on Eventbrite so people can book tickets, and within no time at all, I guess our maximum for the hall is to get a couple of hundred people in, and they go in no time. And so we've already built up a whole load of people who are used to coming to what we put on.
yeah,
And so that's who we kind of aimed that Christmas service towards. And then last week we did our children and youth carol service, where the kids in Sunday school and the young people in the youth performed, did all the reading, songs and all that stuff with a gospel message and a few carols. And then last night we had our community carol service, which was slightly more traditional, but with a band, a couple of solos, and again another gospel message.
Yeah.
So that's kind of our Christmas program, I suppose.
Yeah, it's great, and you're kind of hitting different targets, different groups in the church, and in the community, which is great. And I think you make a really good point there, isn't it? It isn't the impact of just one Christmas, but the fact that you continue to do these things each year. It builds a bit of a following in the community who may not come every week to a service, but want to get involved in something like this.
Absolutely, yeah. It's a slow burner, really. I'd love to say, Gav, that in the services we had, I preached the gospel, and there were 5 people who got saved last night, and there were 4. It doesn't, for us anyway. It doesn't seem to happen that way, but it's kind of just a starter in people having exposure to church and to the gospel, with the hope that they'll then come to something else we do in the year, or they'll start coming on a Sunday and so on.
Yeah, absolutely right. Yeah, I think there can be. Yeah, you're right. We want there to be a gospel message. We want that to be presented.
Yeah.
But there's a lovely way, when you were talking about hot chocolates and mulled wine, you're putting on, you're demonstrating hospitality, aren't you? Which is part of the gospel in many ways, isn't it? And welcoming people in and caring for people, serving people, and so so we need to applaud those kind of aspects of our Christmas program. They are important.
So the aim is that people hear the gospel, right?
Yeah.
Unless people are saved when they hear the message of the gospel. And the reason for that is because people need to be saved, because without Jesus, they're going to hell and not heaven. So yeah, I know that you said I kind of driven by evangelism. I don't think I particularly am. I wish I was a lot more, but the motive for that is that we're talking about where people are going to spend the rest of eternity.
Yeah.
And so when as churches we get caught up in all the other stuff, and that's not the main priority, seeing people saved, we've lost our way. And so we need to be driven to get people to the point that they will at least hear with clarity the message of the gospel.
Yeah.
And I think with trying to do things as well as you possibly can, and trying to sort of reach people at various points, and then when you reach them in terms of coming into the building, you do things as well as you possibly can. It sets up, doesn't it, that opportunity for people to be in the best possible disposition to listen to the gospel, rather than being kind of on edge or with the barriers up. You've already brought those barriers down to some extent by doing things well and by caring about people and loving them.
Yeah, absolutely right. No, I think that's really interesting. Just in terms of promoting and helping churches think about how they promote their kind of Christmas programs. I read an interesting stat this week that said something like 82% of people are willing to attend church from a really close friend invite. And I think that's probably true, isn't it, to some extent, that we can post these things on social media and we can have all these paid promotions and stuff like that, but actually that invite from somebody in your church that goes motivated to tell somebody about Jesus, gives them a leaflet and an invite, is a powerful thing in a way, isn't it? And we don't realize that sometimes, I think.
For sure, the most powerful and effective, Gav. Yeah, I think there was one point in the church's life where, I don't know, whether it was 10 years or whatever it was, I kind of looked back and thought what's worked and what hasn't in terms of people being saved. And I think I worked out somewhere in the region of 90 to 95% of the people who had been saved had been those who had been invited by a family member, work colleague, whatever it is, but someone close to them, and they brought them to, and it was generally church, generally a normal Sunday service. It might have been something just before that, but it almost always settles on they start coming to church and they hear the gospel regularly, and they're in that environment of the gospel and they get saved. Almost, 90, 95%. I think Christmas is different, and I think Christmas is probably the one time of year now, because I don't think that even applies to Easter, but Christmas is the one time of year now where people will see an advert and still see Christmas in terms of a carol service, or a kids service or whatever, as something that they will do as part of their Christmas traditional experience. So I think it still works in terms of advertising, but you're right, ordinarily that's not the case.
Yeah, it's right. Like this year we went back to giving the church leaflets to give to people, and it was like we'd stopped doing them for a number of years and just thought, okay, people will connect their social medias or ads and invite people that way, but actually this year I think we produced something like 250 leaflets, and within 2 weeks they'd all gone, and we were like scrambling thinking, oh, do we need to get more printed, because there's a drive, people are using them, and that was a bit of a surprise for us this year to think, actually, well, when we think about next year, we think about up and coming events next year, maybe there's an invite card that we need to produce that's of quality, that actually we can put in people's hands and say, yeah, let's give these out to folk, because you can stick them through your door, can't you? You can put them through other people, into work colleagues' laps, in the office, and say, yeah, come along to this. We'd love you to be here. So little things like that.
And there are lots of things that are produced as well. So for the last couple of years, we've been using the Evangelical Movement of Wales magazine that they produce at Christmas, which is an evangelist magazine. It's bilingual. And so they produce it for you. You just have to pay for it. They deliver it. You can even get stickers that they'll do for you as well. So you don't have to worry about, how are we going to design it? Will it look really naff? Yeah. So you can buy stuff ready-made for you, but certainly it's something really good to use, for sure.
Yeah, it's good, isn't it? I love that kind of aspect of it. So what do you got left on the Christmas program? You got a Christmas Day service. Are you guys doing stuff like that?
Yeah, Christmas Day service, but that's it now. So it feels for us like Christmas is over. So I'm trying to relax a little bit now. But Christmas Day service, 10 o'clock, and it'll only be, so I'll preach the gospel, but we don't get outsiders come into that one. It'll just be family members who are not saved. Okay. So we don't generally advertise our Christmas Day service, because we don't think we hit people outside of church and family on that day, for us anyway.
Yeah, that's interesting, isn't it? There's a huge debate, isn't there, with cancelling church services and not. And we've never done a Christmas Day kind of service here.
Oh, have you never?
And we do get a few members say, "Oh, wouldn't it be lovely to get together at Christmas?" But when you pull, I guess working in a lager church, you need more people on hand to make it work. And it's nice to give the musicians and kids work and people a week off, isn't it? And just to enjoy their family. So our take has always been, spend time with your family. It's the one part of the year where stuff closes down, and make the most of it. But I think there are a lot of churches who do services on Christmas Day. And for a lot of people listening to this podcast, you're probably a church administrator who's there at 8 o'clock doing the open up and running everything to make it happen.
It does lead to arguments with the wife some years. for sure, because I disappear and then I sleep in the afternoon, and she just hates that. But I love our Christmas Day service, though. I just love the fellowship aspect.
Yeah.
Actually, people come in, and I just think it's fab, and people are just so full of joy and so thankful for what Jesus has done. So there's just the atmosphere on Christmas Day morning is beautiful. So. Yeah, I love it. And we don't put pressure on people to come. And so some people don't come and they prefer to stay at home with their families and so on. But we just have a short 45-minute hour service, involve the kids. We don't have kids clubs. Whoever wants to play in the band can play in the band. And so there's not many. And so I'll be playing Christmas Day. And so, but it's lovely. Yeah, I wouldn't take out Christmas Day for sure.
Yeah, it's good. It's good. And do you guys have much of a strategy of like praying through the month of Christmas as you've got these activities going on? Are you doing that as a leadership team or as a church?
Yes and no, I guess. So strategy, no, in terms of we don't produce anything to encourage people to pray, I guess. I kind of just do it myself, I suppose. If I'm doing an announcement or if someone else is doing an announcement, we'll encourage the church, listen, this is coming up. And so part of the whole process of encouraging people to invite, it's praying who they can think about inviting and then praying that God will speak. And I'm just going to get home to people that we're not just looking to put on something that people are going to enjoy. Or it's going to be professional, or it's going to be really, really well turned out, but something that God is going to be in and speaking through. And I felt really in the past that sometimes you can kind of work so hard at getting it just right and so professional and wanting it to be an enjoyable experience for those people who are coming, that you can miss actually the fact that you really need God to be there. And sometimes some of our Christmases have been, I suppose, times where haven't really felt as much of the presence and the power of God in the preaching as at other times of the year. It's almost sacrificed on the altar of the kind of the Christmas experience. But so that's a focus for sure. Is just driving that home that still people need to hear the gospel in the power of the Spirit, so that their eyes are opened and that they see their need of Jesus, for sure.
Yeah, it's good. And we've got a group of people in our church that come back to the carol service every year, and it's like kids that have grown up in the church that haven't become believers.
Right.
They head off to uni, or they've gone off to different places, but they all seem to come back on the carol service night with their families. And it's just a tremendous time when you think, God, would you use this Christmas to speak to them? You know, those seeds that have been planted all those years, maybe as they've grown up in the church, but haven't, quite got to that place of faith themselves. And I love that kind of aspect. I love seeing those turn up. And I think, Lord, do something tonight, will you? That's going to change hearts and minds. So,
no, absolutely. It's just, I think you mentioned at the start, it's just taking every single opportunity for the gospel, isn't it? It's just constantly thinking wherever you get an opportunity to, whether it's one-on-one or whether it's in a church setting or event setting, where can you get the opportunity to confront someone with the gospel? And then you just leave it with the Lord to do his work in his time. And so even last night, this lady was kind of leaving, and I didn't know who she was. I didn't recognize her, but she did stop to talk just briefly. And it was one of those moments I thought, I'm not sure if you've been before. And I'm going to embarrass myself by asking if you've been before now. And she said she hadn't been before, other than I think she came to the carol service last year. So this was her second carol service, but she'd been watching online. And I just had a really good chat with this lady who, went to church as a kid, is now in her 40s. But something triggered in her at some point where she just thought, I need something. I need God. I need whatever it is, a bit of religion or whatever. And then she's just been following the services online. So for us is another kind of avenue of we just get the gospel out wherever we can. And we're discovering more and more that people have been watching online. And then this lady who's been watching online plucked up the courage to come last night. And I was just chatting to her on the stairwell saying, like, you need to come in person now, And you could start just tearing up, thinking, I know I need this, but I'm a little bit scared, but I feel I want to make that jump to start coming to church, So it really is just every opportunity possible to reach people.
I love that. And I haven't prepped you with this, but resources that you've used that are helpful. I mean, you talked about the EMW magazine, that's useful. Yeah. Have you got anything that you give out to folk who maybe are searching, or any little booklets and stuff like that?
Yeah, I bought hundreds of copies this year of Why Jesus, actually.
Okay.
So Why Jesus is produced by Alpha. It's a good little booklet. Well, we've bought a Good Book Company, so 10 of those, produced some great literature. So there's just lots of stuff out there. But again, it's just so good to have something to give to people on the way out of the carol service. We've delivered hundreds of these magazines around the streets last week. So any opportunity. And you know what we've been doing? I know this isn't Christmas, but what we've been doing recently, Gav, is, I think I told you before, we've been going out on the streets, just giving out tracts to people in Port Talbot, and we've just had so many good conversations with people, and shared the gospel with just so many people. And even today, just before the podcast with you, I was speaking to a lady who came to the church, who rang me up just a few weeks ago to say, you don't know who I am, but you gave me a leaflet on the streets last Friday.
Right.
And I had a tragedy in my life earlier on this year.
Right.
And I just feel I need to speak to you. I don't know why. I just feel I need to speak to you. And so I've been meeting up with this lady who's had this horrific tragedy. And not found anybody to talk to, but just by being out in the streets, God has just put us together, and I'm getting this opportunity to share the gospel with her every week. She's not saved yet, but she knows that talking to me about the grief, there's a degree of hope there, and that's what she's looking for. She's so bereft with losing her daughter, that she's just looking for hope somewhere. So it's just another strain of, right, we're out on the streets every week, and it scares the living daylights out of me. It's not me at all. I hate it before I go out, and I love it when I've finished, because as a church pastor, I rarely get opportunity to talk to people on a one-to-one about what Jesus has done, because I'm just not, I'm not in that kind of world too much anymore. But putting yourself out in the streets, it's just great. So it really is the motive. People need to be saved. And so you look for any opportunity, prayer-backed, to tell people the gospel.
I love that. And when are you doing that? Is that sometime on a Saturday or in the midweek?
No, we go out. We go out at 1 o'clock on a Friday. There's nothing significant about that. It just works for us, really. And but I've got these young people, youngish 20s, who come with me as well, and they're just brilliant. They'll just go up to people on a park bench and sit down next to them and just start talking to them. And we got this one Nigerian guy who's only been saved a couple of years, but I was in a conversation with him and hearing him share the gospel and talking about hell and the seriousness of hell with this person. It was really quite staggering to hear someone who was not just talking about hell on the streets to somebody, but really believed it and was passionate about wanting someone to know the truth. And so for the first time in a long time, I thought, here's a guy who really does believe the full gospel and actually believes there's a hell, but is delivering it with real passion and desire for somebody to be saved.
Mate, I love it. I said at the start of this podcast, there's gifting in you, mate, to reach out and evangelistic. I know you find it hard, but there's gifting.
No, I honestly don't think it's no, it's not that at all, because I feel so uncomfortable going out with a complete stranger. That's not me, you know.
Yeah.
And I'm not a natural talker. I haven't really got the gift of the gab, I don't think. And I'm not great with slogans and phrases and stuff. And so I honestly don't think I'm an evangelist. It's honestly, I remember when I first got saved, Gavin, and just realizing just how big it is that, man, I was heading for hell, and I've been saved from that. And God has come into my life and changed everything. And so there can't be anything more significant than that in our lives. Nothing should take over that. So that's not to do with gifting. That's just grasping just the importance of it, really. And maybe just thinking about ways to reach people where they are today in this generation. Not in a kind of a churchified way, but trying to think on the same level that people are at today, so that we get that opportunity to present them with the gospel. I think that's mainly what it's about.
Good, mate. I appreciate that. So what have you got planned for next year then? How are you gonna, what are your plans to take this gospel out there and reach a lost generation? What are you've got loads of ideas, I'm sure. Continue what you're doing on the street.
I got no ideas. Just
I don't believe that.
I know, it's true. Sometimes I'm organized, and I've got events planned coming up, and I've booked different speakers and stuff, and I've got ideas, and I generally don't have anything at this moment in time. I don't think I've had a chance really to think it through. So no breaking ideas. And so if that can be helpful to anybody on the podcast, if you're as disorganized as I am, and you haven't planned ahead, and you're not a brilliant strategist, and you haven't planned the diary for next year, then you're not necessarily in good company, but you're in company with other people who haven't done it either. So no great plans as yet, but hopefully we'll start thinking through things soon.
Yeah, and God leads us, doesn't he? There's grace is tremendous in leadership, isn't it? It just, it's big signposts that go this way and take the gospel here, and I'll empower you to do it and give you opportunity to do it. And we're looking forward to a kind of team retreat, hopefully in January, to gather and start to think about those things. And you're right, taking some time out to just energize yourself and just in love with the gospel and all that Christ has done for you. And then how do we build this into the church? How can we serve our church in taking this message out? And if that stat is true, that 82% of people would go because a friend has invited them to church, I want to take that seriously. I want to invite my friends and get people along to church to hear the good news of Jesus. So
that's the key. Honestly, I realized that years ago when. And at different times in church life, we've been, I guess, in a good place and in a bad place. And when we've been in a bad place, it's when we've not been focused on the gospel, and people haven't been passionate about the gospel, and they haven't been inviting friends in, and that's led to us not being so unified, and that's led to us not being so excited about what God is doing. And so definitely the most important thing is just having a church that knows the gospel, loves the gospel, loves the Lord, and that just grips them, so I think if we're trying to do things and reach people with a congregation that just isn't in love with Jesus and isn't passionate about the gospel, we'll be fighting a losing battle. We really will. And whatever we do and whatever we put on, it probably won't work. But when we've got a congregation that loves the gospel and gets hold of the fact that I want my friends to be saved because they need to be saved, I want my relatives to be saved because they need to be saved, then I think that really is, I think that's what it's all about. It really is, yeah. And all the other stuff then it's important, so that then moves to, right, what do I need to do, sometimes creatively, in order to reach people where they're at. Yeah. But it starts with the right foundation of the gospel, for sure.
Yeah. Mate, fantastic. We will finish on that because it is so, so important. And thank you, mate. Thank you so much for your time. And
pleasure, Gav.
Listening to you. I love your passion for the gospel. And love to see, seeing all that God's been doing in you guys. This is your 20th year anniversary, mate, isn't it, of the church? And it's just an amazing grace. And so, Neil, thanks for your time. Thanks for being on the church office, and thanks for supporting it, mate, and promoting it, and getting involved in it. I really appreciate that.
Pleasure, mate. Thank you so much.
All right, great. Well, if you've got any questions, any follow-ups that you'd like to send in to get in touch with Neil or myself, we would love to connect with you if we can encourage you in any way in the gospel and thinking about how can you reach out with the gospel to your community to bless your church, then please get in contact at info@thechurchoffice.co.uk. Check out the website. There's new resources, there's new videos, new documents that hopefully will save you time and effort. All of these are available for free on the website, and we want to serve churches and get behind them to tell people about the good news of Jesus. And if we can make things run more smoothly in the background, then we would love to do that with a heart that's for the gospel. So thank you for listening in, and thank you for enjoying the video, and we'll see you again some point too. Bye-bye.